I really want to watch this though.
I think that I've fallen out of love with Final Fantasy XIV. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is going to be another video essay about how terrible Dawntrail is, right? No, not exactly. Because my moment of realization wasn't in the middle of a cooking competition with Wukla Mod. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even while I was playing Final Fantasy XIV. It was while I was playing Final Fantasy XVI that the spell finally broke. I want to make one thing clear. I'm a normal guy, I have a normal job, a budding independent business, a couple of dogs. I don't have a ton of time to play video games, let alone make videos for this channel. Thus, in order to avoid wasting my limited time, I don't buy games that I don't scrutinize heavily.
What's up, Rizzy?
And I certainly don't appreciate when games disrespect what little time I have. Final Fantasy XVI was one of the few games that I've ever purchased on faith alone. Faith that was founded in my experience with
Never
Final
got to
Fantasy
play
XIV, which at the time of 16's release, I would have considered both the best MMORPG on the market and the best narrative in a video game. I know, that's a bold claim, but shut up.
I think the player base has dropped in FF14, right, chat? Like since Dawntrail? I feel like Endwalker was like almost the peak. Shadowbringers and Endwalker was like the peak, but it started going down after Dawntrail. I saw a tweet about it. I don't know if it's accurate. It might just be bullshit, but from what they're saying, like the player base has dropped. Which is kind of sad to see because like I love this game obviously, but
Shadowbringers was really that good. For those of you who are
Shadowbringers was actually so fucking good because I loved Eden Raid so much and the story. Like that's around the time when I joined, but I joined like at the end of Shadowbringers where like the hype was real, bro. Like all the streamers from World of Warcraft, all of them moved over to Final Fantasy XIV. They looked at it as the, you know, the new big MMORPG. Like this is the game everyone's playing now. It was FF14's peak. But then when Dawntrail came, it just went dropped down, huh? Biggest drop in Final Fantasy XIV history? Like across the board? Damn.
Initiated 14 and 16 are both products of Creative Studio.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of problems I think with Dawntrail, of course. I still feel like they can still fix stuff, you know? I think it can still improve. There's still, the expansion is still around. There's more patches coming. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, the start is kind of rough. I mean, the raids were good. I think the raids were good. I think the ultimate was good. The chaotic is good. I feel like the content was good. The trials were good. I think people really just didn't like the story, man. I feel like a lot of people hated that. I think that was like the biggest thing about Dawntrail and why people think negatively of it. Like people really didn't like the story.
Once called,
especially in a very story-focused game.
It's a surprise to any of you that the two games bear more.
Yeah, they went back to WoW.
In fact, they're alarmingly similar in almost every way outside of fidelity, and of course one being an MMORPG and the other being a single-player game. I'll be blunt, Final Fantasy XVI kinda sucked. I acknowledge that the visuals are gorgeous and that the music is wonderful, even if it is just Eureka, and the boss encounters had the budget of a small country's gross domestic product, but the game itself kinda sucked. 16's world...
Really? He said FF16 sucked? Oh, interesting. I thought it was like, I mean, from what I see, I mean, it seems like a good game, but hey, to each in their own.
It was barren, uninteresting to explore, and entirely devoid of danger. The most threatening thing awaiting
I never played it, so I can't talk.
A list of uninspired side quests that offer
I'll never talk about something I've never experienced myself, so I'd rather not.
Either an intrinsic gameplay experience worth having, nor an extrinsic reward worth suffering for. Its combat appears intensive, but it masks its shallow systems behind overwrought visuals to keep you from realizing that the enemies you've been fighting haven't swung their weapons in about 6 or 7 seconds. 16 even has the gall to present the player with a crafting system which offers statistical upgrades in order to create the illusion of progression and customization, but the system exists to fulfill a feature quota rather than being something interesting.
I still want to play it.
Does any of that sound familiar to you? Huh. What other game might that list of flaws also describe? I just can't put my finger on it. If you guessed Final Fantasy XIV, then congratulations, you've been paying attention, and you've won today's special prize. Please collect a free copy of a good MMO on your way out. In my mind, the developers of my favorite MMORPG would surely create a masterpiece with all of the financial backing of Square.
Bro, what are some of the top MMOs right now, by the way? Like, yeah, WoW is like obviously going to be the big one. It's the biggest MMO of all time throughout literally decades. What's the next biggest MMO right now? Like, I always thought Final Fantasy XIV is the second biggest. I don't know if that's the case anymore after Dawntrail, but I feel like it is. I mean, there's Guild Wars 2, yeah, but like, is it as big as FF? I don't know. I don't even know how things are right now in 2025. Like, what's the metric like for MMORPGs? FF is second. I feel like it is, even after Dawn Trail and the number of players dropping. I feel like it still would be second. Like, this really shows you that the MMO games, there's very few of them that are like considered the best, you know? Like, there's WoW, there's FF, and I guess there's Lost Ark, but I don't know how big that is. Guild Wars 2, there's Throne of Liberty, but like, I don't know how big that is. Maybe we can do some, you know, I'll check the trends later. I'll just watch the video for now.
Enix in a full-length AAA development cycle. Yet the result of that effort was one of the most restrained, lifeless, and quite frankly boring games I've ever played.
Yeah, I think RB keeps FF14 alive.
The title.
For sure.
I know. Everybody loves Yoshi P, and you're already upset that I would even suggest that his stewardship of these 2 Final Fantasy entries has been anything less than stellar. But you have to agree that if there's an issue, then the buck has to stop somewhere. And what better place than with the director? So hold off on disliking the video. Just
I think main thing with Yoshi that people like criticize him about is when he mentions that you should play other games. Like, he himself will tell you play other games, and people like don't like that. Like, they want to keep playing FF, right? I feel like that's one of the main things. But I love him, of course, because he made a great game. But I can see what people mention.
Yeah. Let me make my case.
I can see what people are saying, basically. The problem with Yoshi P.
Let's talk about the culture of fear that defines Creative Studio 3's
culture of fear
philosophy. A few years ago, NoClip released a documentary about Final Fantasy XIV's
brilliant videos, by the way.
Eventual recovery from the brink with the leadership of Naoki Yoshida.
Oh yeah, I forgot about OSRS. That's huge.
But some of you who are watching this in front of a live audience right now shamelessly re-uploaded it to your channels. It was an inspiring story of determination.
I totally didn't do that, by the way. Totally not up on YouTube or anything.
Determination, unbridled passion, and draconian micromanagement.
I actually just got called out
of one of the most
because I reacted to it. Actually caught.
When I watched it, however, I was struck by one particular scene during Yoshida's interview. I will paraphrase. Basically, Yoshi P claimed to have implemented a system of task micromanagement which tracked an individual employee's job down to the minute. You can imagine that such a system would be necessary when attempting to rebuild an MMO in 18 months. The results, of course, speak for themselves, but I could never let go of that quote. Why would anyone want to work under those conditions? Well, thank goodness they aren't doing that anymore. But do we know that? Are we sure that Yoshi P has loosened his grip in the last 10 years that he's helmed Square Enix's flagship live service game? While I would assume that working conditions have changed at the studio, only the people on the inside can say for certain. Either way, I can't.
I mean, there's no way to know.
That the specter of those grueling 18 months is hanging over Creative Studio 3 to this day, despite all of its success.
Oh, that's interesting, Flair. Yoshi saved the game, but is slowly killing it by being afraid of changing stuff. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, maybe you're right. Who knows? Who knows for sure? I feel like they're adding stuff rather than changing stuff, which is, I mean, still good. Like, they added the new FR. Like, I mean, every expansion they're gonna add the raids, the ultimate. The chaotic is a completely new addition. I'm actually a fan of it. But yeah, that's like battle content. I don't know. I don't know what. There's definitely stuff missing. Okay, let's just say that. There's definitely stuff missing.
How they make
yeah, the game is not bad. Like, it's in a very good state. It's just not perfect. Like, there's a lot of things I feel still are missing. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, chat. I really don't like the tome capping. I hate it. I feel like I just have to force myself to cap it on 3 different characters. It's annoying. But that's just me. I don't know. Like, I get it's part of the weekly stuff that you do. It's just the fact that I want to do it on NA, on my alt, and on my main whenever, like, you know, a raid comes out. And people have mentioned they want the cap to be 500 or something more so you can buy your first tome piece on the week 1, stuff like that. I mean, there's obviously complaints about that still.
Consider the way that both 14 and 16...
Yeah, I feel like Chaotic is good casual content, no? I feel like it is. Like, it's really fun. Or, okay, maybe casual / mid-core. I feel like that's where Chaotic stands. The game needs to change, and I'd say that it's more so on a whole development issue than just playing one per... Yeah, I agree. That's why I'm kind of curious what else he mentions in this video, because the video just, like, specifically mentions, like, the problem with Yoshi P himself. Or I guess he's, I don't know, let's see.
Create their own combat systems. No one would disagree that both of these titles are narrative driven, but there is a sense that Creative Studio 3 is ashamed of the fact that they have to interrupt their storytelling with obligatory combat encounters. 14 is an absurdly easy game in nearly every respect, sequestering its truly difficult content as far away from players as possible in order to ensure that story progression cannot be impeded by gameplay. To experience 14's current Savage tier, one has to play through over 200 hours of story, which is composed almost entirely of stinted cutscenes with sparse gameplay along
I guess if you skip everything, it's not 200 hours, but yeah.
the way. What gameplay challenges do exist,
I guess you are
nearly
paying attention
impossible
to the story.
fail, which makes them feel trivial and unrewarding.
Dude, 200 hours? Wait. I just want to be sure. When he's saying 200 hours, he's talking about from Realm Reborn all the way to Dawntrail? I'm assuming, because holy fuck, that's a lot. I guess if you don't skip anything.
Do exist are nearly
Yeah,
impossible to
god
fail, which
damn.
makes them feel
Bro, that is a
trivial and
lot of
unrewarding.
cutscenes.
This is a problem that persists into the level cap. During Endwalker's 6.2 patch cycle,
Right.
Yoshida himself talked about falling asleep during an expert dungeon, an experience that I've had throughout Dawntrail and Final Fantasy
Wait,
16.
really? He fell asleep during expert? For some players like me, I kind of get sleepy because it's so repetitive. We rarely fall asleep when we play games and we're really into it. I'm trying to see if I can spice it up a little and bring the excitement back. What do you guys think about the current the current max level dungeons? Do you guys fall asleep during those? Like, I definitely get bored with the older ones for sure, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like Dawntrail, they're snappy, like they're good. Yeah, I feel like the current dungeons are good. So, I mean, he did say he wants to like bring some excitement back to it. And I feel like it is. I feel like it is fun. I think they did that job well with Expert Roulette. Yeah. A good step up, but still a bit sleepo. I'm still getting hit by some of the stuff. I fall asleep doing Fate Breaker. Okay, you know what? Fair enough. There was a time when I was playing FRU for 10 hours and I did kind of like doze off during phase 1 of FRU. But like later on, I kind of like lock in, you know? Oh my god, top P1. Okay, fine. Sometimes there are sleeper moments. Like you can't always... I don't know, this is just how the game is, okay? Like if I'm playing Marvel Rivals, League of Legends, Overwatch, like I'm always locked in for the whole game. Obviously in FF it's different because of the flow of the bosses, right? Like there's a certain flow where you can like chill back and relax. But yeah, I don't know.
Asleep during an expert dungeon, an experience that I've had throughout Dawntrail and Final Fantasy 16. Despite boasting a combat
Like
system
something that like keeps your attention the entire like duration.
Part by Ryota Suzuki, who led the design of the combat in Devil May Cry
Of the fight.
5, 16's gameplay is similarly toothless. The general difficulty is extremely low, with enemies of every variety, from your standard spider in a forest to an S-rank hump mark, offering little to no threat throughout the course of the campaign. Which, by the way, must be completed in order to access Final Fantasy mode, which increases the difficulty to a more acceptable level. Again, push the good stuff as far away as possible. Funny enough,
I see what he's saying. Push the good stuff as far away as possible, like going through 200-hour cutscenes to get to the crazy fun parts.
you can actually decrease.
I mean, I see what he's saying.
By wearing the timely rings, which trivialize.
You can buy a story skip, but yeah, that would require you to buy.
Or dodging enemy attacks, or even performing combos. These accessories are optional, of course, but they're emblematic of Creative Studio 3's fear that a player will be unable to overcome a gameplay challenge, and as a result, miss the opportunity to experience the next cutscene. Thus, they build their games to be nearly impossible to fail, smoothing out the rough textures that make playing video games interesting, and then they hide any semblance of challenge as far out of view as possible out of fear that you might be scared off, all in service of storytelling.
I'm Urklamat, claimant to the throne of Tulihuela.
What I'm about to say applies exclusively to 14. Creative Studio 3 demonstrates more of that paralyzing fear of failure.
Like, he just edited that in.
Expansions are a strict template.
Fear of failure. This one's gonna be interesting.
Upon which an identical experience is built. By refusing to innovate or to introduce new kinds of content or to even reinvent dated systems.
I feel like the new kinds of content. When was this video made? 2 days ago? I mean, isn't chaotic basically new kind of content? I mean, I feel like it is. I mean, we've never had something like that. So I feel like this part, like, it is very fresh. I assume when he says this, like, different types other than the chaotic, but he doesn't specifically mention that, so.
Identical experience is built. By refusing to innovate or to introduce new kinds of content or to even reinvent dated systems, Creative Studio 3 successfully evades any possible crisis while also circumventing all potential.
Reinvent data systems. I feel like, am I crazy? But didn't they literally do that by reworking ARR dungeons and like reworking the fucking, what's it called? The trials where it explains the game for you. I forgot what it's called. They changed the tutorial. It means tone campus stuff. Oh, like certain designs. Reinvented dated systems. Okay, I guess systems. Maybe I'm just using the word systems as in like, you know, some of the dated stuff that already has changed in Dawntrail.
Creative Studio 3 successfully evades any possible crisis while also circumventing all potential to provide their paying customers
okay, I understand now.
Experiences. Unless they're building a mobile game, of course. In that case, pull out all the stops. The worlds that Creative Studio 3 creates are always beautifully rendered, yet painfully constrained and completely lacking in any sense of danger or discovery. As I began my journey with 16, I immediately recognized the map design as identical to 14's, which gave me some pause because it reminded me specifically of A Realm Reborn. Consider the marshes just south of Martha's Rest. There were moments when traversing the environment and I would see an objective across a river, but because of the restrictive map design, I would be unable to reach it without taking an unnatural detour. It felt completely unintuitive to have to circumnavigate terrain which appeared traversable. Then I remembered that as a hallmark of 14's early world design. One of the first negative impressions I had of Final Fantasy XIV was when I realized how segmented Limsa Lominsa was, not to mention the rest of the areas in which A Realm Reborn takes place. The world provides the illusion of a playable space, but the map reveals how small that space truly is. Ultimately, I forgave the game for this flaw, chalking it up to the technical limitations of the PlayStation 3, but when I laid eyes on this, I began to wonder whether or not technical limitations were the culprit after all.
It does feel like FF14 map, right? It's got like these parts here and it's connecting, and then there's like parts here. It really feels like FF14. It's definitely got the same feel to it. Like certain, like segmented zones. I feel like if they released the Eureka Line content after first raid and then updated throughout the expansion, it would be better. Imagine if they had a zone like Elden Ring where you walk through poison all day. Oh man. God, I need to play that game again, by the way. That's what I miss about WoW. WoW is seamless, which makes it feel massive. Yeah, WoW is crazy because like to get to certain zones, you have to take a ship, and then that ship takes you over, and it feels like World of Warcraft feels really open. I feel because of that, you know, like it really shows you the scale of how big the world is by you taking these airships and getting from point A to point B, or like going across the ocean to get to the other side. Like you experience that journey from point A to point B. Like it's like a flow going there. It's actually really cool. Like WoW is very immersive with that, I feel. Yeah. It's really good in that. Whereas obviously in FF14, like you just take Aetherites, right? Like you just teleport. I mean, I don't mind the Aetherites, like, because, you know, I just want to get to the spot fast. I don't care about the world traversal. But you have to admit, the open world of WoW is really well done because of the whole way of traversing across the map. I think it's really well done. It's like it really feels like an open world, you know? We're fucked by consoles mostly. WoW doesn't have that problem. Yeah, that's a good point. I actually forgot about that. They have to make sure that this game is accessible for both, you know, PC and consoles. They can't like push past what they, you know, past what they have, unless a new PlayStation 6 comes out or something. But now we're on PS5.
What is the reason to continue designing playable environments in this way? And what is the purpose of populating these spaces with enemies that pose absolutely no threat?
Yeah, so why... Actually, I'm thinking about it now. So why did they design the maps like this in Final Fantasy 16 if it doesn't have console limitations? They could have made it more, I don't know, quote-unquote open, I guess, instead of like exactly like FF14's design. I mean, it is very similar, right? I don't know. I mean, fair point.
What is the reason to continue designing?
No aura? No aura, Nino, it's over? Wait, what do you mean? What is that? The instance in WoW. Oh, like retail WoW changed something. Oh, I don't know how things are looking now.
Playable environments.
I don't know what aura is.
And what is the purpose of populating these spaces with enemies that pose absolutely no threat to any player who has the capacity to mash square? Some of the most memorable moments that I've ever had in the entirety of my life playing video games have been a result of emergent gameplay. I recently had an amazing encounter with this while playing Throne and Liberty. I was exploring an environment, then I ran into an unexpected...
Oh, you're talking about aura, like the race. Oh my god. Okay, I thought you're talking like aura, you know, like, oh, Alninio, you have aura. You know what I mean? Like all the fucking kids say that nowadays. Anyway.
Combat encounter, which
God, I'm fucking old.
Hour-long crime session with total strangers. You'll hear more about that game.
I thought you're talking boomer language, bro, or zoomer language.
Next episode. But those types of experiences in which the player engages with the game's systems and environments to create an unexpected outcome are completely missing in Creative Studio 3's games. This is a result of two design choices. First, as I mentioned before...
I mean, you don't. Also true. Do I have aura, chat? I got aura. Hey, yo, I got motion. I got aura, bro.
The lack of threats in both 14 and 16.
I got motion.
Circumstances, the game is working overtime to ensure that you are never in danger while you are moving towards your next objective in the narrative. In particular, 16 has an issue with allowing the player to severely outscale the creatures in the open world, while also making it impossible for them to dismount.
That mob is called Helldiver.
Interrupt player movement. So
hey, yo.
You barely have to consider their existence as you run past them. If
the player does decide
to engage them, then the enemies usually spend most of the fight standing still, allowing you to ruin them with the same combo that you've performed hundreds of times before. 14 is similarly bland in this respect, with the exception of S-rank hump marks, which boast unique and deadly attacks. However,
yeah, the mechanics for I really like what they do with hunts, by the way. Like all of them do really interesting mechanics, and they're different. Well, I don't do S-train, I do A-train because I need those clusters, whatever it's called, because I need materia. But they're actually cool mechanics.
By organized hunt trains, whose sheer numbers completely trivialize the danger of those encounters. And second, the lack of discoverability in the open world. Throughout both games, 14 and 16 boast beautiful worlds which serve as nothing more than set dressing for their respective narratives.
I need to hear that again. Lack of discoverability. Not wrong. Not wrong. Like, you know, in Guild Wars 2, there's like achievements that are revolved around like, oh, find this hidden thing in that zone, and then you go in and there's like jump puzzles that you can get to it. Like Guild Wars 2, I think, does a very good job at that, like the open world jump puzzles. I mean, there are jump puzzles in FF14, but what I'm saying is Guild Wars 2 has jump puzzles that lead to getting something out of it. Like if you're working on a legendary ring, you have to do like a certain jump puzzle and then get to there. Yeah, the griffin eggs. Yeah, exactly. Like the griffin eggs, you have to do like a bunch of shit for that. And it's actually a big grind. But yeah, it really revolves around the open world to actually get the griffin mount, which is huge because the griffin is such a good mount. Anyway, mounts are different in Guild Wars 2. But yeah, I see what he's saying there. Like when it comes to that, I think Guild Wars 2 does a very good job with discoverability in the open world. I feel like open world in general is just not FF14's main thing. But I think when it comes down to Eureka and Bosja, I think they do a good job at that. Just not like, I don't know. The open world is not something I want to do. I only do it if I want materia or like clusters. Like at the start of an expansion or something.
Discoverability in the open world. Throughout both games, 14 and 16 boast beautiful worlds which serve as nothing more than set dressing for their respective narratives. There are no hidden treasures behind waterfalls, there are no destroyable consumables, and there are certainly no secrets to uncover.
Yeah, Guild Wars 2 has all of that.
Creative Studio 3's world design trains the player.
Yeah, it's just not what 14 is made for. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely one of F14's flaws, but I don't view this game as that type of game. I don't know. So for me, it like doesn't matter that much. Because I mainly go in this game to just do story and do raids, pretty much. You know what I mean? Like, they do such a good job with the raids. Like, some of the best experience I've had killing bosses is in Final Fantasy XIV.
Pay as little attention to it as possible, never having to consider his or her options against a dangerous threat, never wondering if there might be something worthwhile to discover off the beaten path. Everything exists in service to the narrative, so as long as the world looks pretty and it stays out of the way of the finely crafted cutscenes, then it's a thumbs up from Yoshi P. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm a busy guy. One night, following a 12-hour workday, I decided to sit down and play Final Fantasy XVI. I gave myself about an hour of gameplay before I would get ready for bed. In that hour, I touched my controller twice, maybe. The session was mostly cutscenes, all fantastically performed, but cutscenes nonetheless. I remember putting my controller down and going to bed having done virtually nothing.
Anyone played Metal Gear Solid 4? Any Metal Gear gamers in chat? That shit was like a movie. I mean, some games are like that. Some games are like movie, but also Metal Gear Solid 4 had so much gameplay still. Like, so much. But MGS4 was literally made like a movie slash game. The gameplay was freaking amazing. Doesn't MGS4 have over an hour? Oh, it has so much. Like, you enter one cutscene and there's like 5, 6 different cutscenes, and you can skip them, of course, but they take so long. Like, first there's dialogue, and there's explanation of something they were discussing, and then they go back to the dialogue, and then there's another explanation of something happening. It's like keeps going. It keeps going. I liked it because I was into Metal Gear's lore, right? So for me, like, I didn't bother me so much because I knew what I was getting into. Yeah, MGS4 has so much cutscenes. And I get that's not like everyone's thing, right? Like, a lot of the times you want to play the game, but there are a lot of times where I put down the controller and I just watched. Yeah. Definitely not everyone's thing. But for me, like, if you know what you're getting into, it's not so bad, you know? Especially if you like the lore. I'm a big Metal Gear fan, by the way. Like, I love stealth and stuff, so, you know, that's kind of my thing. But anyway, I see his point there, though, that he's not, like, into that, like, super long cutscenes.
In that session. Then I came back the next night, and guess what? The same thing. More cutscenes and almost no gameplay. I began to notice a
Ooh, almost no gameplay. I don't know, damn. I mean, Metal Gear had so much gameplay. Even with the amount of cutscenes it had, there was so much gameplay. So, I mean, I never played FF16, so I can't speak for that, you know?
pattern, which I realized had started as far back as my introduction to Final Fantasy.
There has to be
14,
gameplay.
6 years
A
prior.
decent amount of
Creative
it.
Studio 3 has a terrible habit of stripping away the player's agency in the story that they're so desperate to tell. At every turn in both 14 and 16, control is ripped out of your hands, turning you into a passive observer rather than an active participant.
I agree with this, actually. With FF14, yeah. There's a lot of moments where you're just like reading and reading and reading. Yeah, I mean, that's just how the game is designed, right? But I would like, I don't know, this is just a dream for me, but I would like FF14 cutscenes to just be more, I don't know, you know the parts where you're like, there's like dialogue and there's no voice acting, and then Woklamat like turns to you and then she nods and then she turns to the other person and then she goes, yeah, and then clap. Like, you know, I want more with that. Am I crazy for wanting that? I just want the cutscenes to be like really impactful. Like each and every single cutscene to be very impactful and like really have meaning behind it. I don't know. That's just me though. Does that make me spoiled for like preferring other type of games when it comes to storytelling? And now it's like I don't get it in FF14. I don't know. I still like FF14 story, of course, but I would like those cutscenes. That's not how storytelling works. Okay, how does storytelling work, Aragon? You let me know. Because when I play a game like, okay, I need to give a good example though. I need to, I don't know, it's hard. I mean, because FF14 is an MMO, it's different. I would have to give an MMO. Okay, I can actually. Guild Wars 2. Guild Wars 2, every cutscene in Guild Wars 2 is perfect. Like all of it has voice acting, all of it is immersive. I'm always like locked in on the story when it comes to Guild Wars 2. Like every cutscene is meaningful, every dialogue is meaningful. Guild Wars 2 is actually the best example I can give because it's fair, because it's an MMORPG. I don't know. I get like FF14 has a different format, a different way of telling the story. But when it comes to the way it's done, I do like Guild Wars 2's method. I do like it a lot because everything has voice acting and I kind of get into it that way. I don't know. That's just me. Like, maybe it's just how my brain works, man. Like, I tend to give more attention to things when they have voice acting because I can feel the emotion of the character. I can feel what it is they're trying to say. Like, bro, when that cutscene with Zoralja, for example, with Galul Jaja, when he fought him, like, oh my god, like the voice acting was cool and like the way he was talking, it was epic. I don't know. I just would like that. Yeah, like that's just me though, arrogant, you know? Like I would like more voice acting because like that's just my attention span sometimes. Like I get more locked in. Like for example, like okay, I'll give you an example. I'm watching a movie and then the next room I have to do a math equation. Does that make sense? Like with the math equation video, I guess I just don't care and I give more attention to the movie. I don't know if that's a good example, but like I'll just put it like that. I just give more attention to certain things based on the way it's delivered, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's just me though. Yeah, voice acting adds so much, yeah.
In the game. This game design habit has only worsened in 14 with the release of Dawn Trail. Attempting to play through the expansion story in
a lot of people hated the Dawn Trail story, man. The way that they've done it. A lot of people.
Game. This game design habit has only worsened in 14.
As much voice acting as Guild Wars 2? Yeah. Jessica, I'm with you on that. I feel like they should have more voice acting. Doesn't World of Warcraft do that as well? I think World of Warcraft does that. I mean, there are some parts, but I don't know. When it comes to the story, when I played it, at least.
With the release of Dawn Trail, attempting to play through
I can definitively say Guild Wars 2 though did it very well.
Story in 1 or 2 hour intervals like any regular person with a regular schedule was torture, like off the books CIA black site torture. The only conclusion that I can reasonably come to is that
no one at Creative Studio 3 plays their own games the way that we play them. I mean, I don't know. Maybe.
Studio 3 plays their own games the way that we play them. Now, I am well aware that Yoshi P is famously active in Final Fantasy XIV, but what I'm questioning here is whether or not anyone at that studio, particularly its vaunted director, has ever sat down to play through their game's stories in a single, uninterrupted session. If they had, then maybe someone might have noticed how often their games insist on playing themselves for fear of the player's input sullying the experience. These games are not...
Yeah, I can agree with him on this, like in a sense. Obviously, I always read the story every time, but there were definitely, I will admit, like I love the story and everything, but I will admit there were many parts in Dawn Trail where I felt like I was forced to read a section that I didn't give that much of a fuck about. Like the Pelu Pelus. I read through it, you know, because I'm a story enjoyer, but there were parts where it's like, oh, you know, these Galuls, they're sitting around and one of them has the thing and then you have to click him and then you're inspecting him and then it's like, I'm sorry, but like I don't care about doing all that stuff. I don't know. Like for me, it's not progressing the story meaningfully, if that makes sense. That's me though. That's just my opinion. You limited how you can tell the story? I mean, yeah, I guess so, in a sense. Like there's so many cutscenes in FF14, like that could be done differently, I feel. The same way the usual gamer do. I think it's meant to be this way regardless. Yeah, this is the same format Final Fantasy has had since the beginning, right? Right, chat? It's like since Realm Reborn, we followed the same format, like with the dialogue. But there's always this like epic fucking cutscene, like so epic. And like, I just get locked back in. My full attention is on the game now. Oh my god, it's my boy S9 coming in hot, slapping the shit out of Nidhogg, pierces his skull. Oh my god, that was one of the best cutscenes ever, by the way. Like, those type of things and the voice acting, it's so immersive for me. Like, those are the parts I really, really love in FF14. And I wish it was like, often like that, you know what I mean? It just feels like you do have to grind a certain part and then boom, it hits you big. I just wish the grinding to that part is like immersive, if that makes sense.
Not
since FF1. Oh damn, this isn't even just from since FF14. I'm still not done with Dawn Trail, but so far the narrative is weaker, but the vibes are good. Yeah, I think
visual novels, at least ostensibly. However, they certainly do function like visual novels, interrupted by brief spurts of well-dressed yet paper-thin gameplay. Under Yoshi P's leadership, Creative Studio 3 is inviting
this point I kind of see a lot.
less participation from players as the years go on. Both 14's recent expansion and 16 go to great lengths to tell you what happened in the story rather than showing you or even allowing you to interact with the events yourself. For example, in Dawntrail, we weren't allowed to participate in the cooking contest or the rebuilding of the train in Shalawani or the invasion of Tuliyola. All of those critical events in the story were cutscenes. 16 is guilty of this too, with the most egregious example.
I mean, didn't we fix the train? It was fucking annoying to do that. The train. I hated that part, by the way. That was my least favorite part in all of Dawntrail, the rebuilding of that damn train. I mean, we were directly involved doing it, weren't we? Maybe I just didn't understand what he's saying there.
Or even allowing you to interact with the events yourself. For example, in Dawntrail...
Yeah, allowing you to interact with the events yourself. We did interact with the whole... Oh, I guess what he means is like directly interacting with the train. Like... Okay, I get what he's saying. It's like you have to, it's like skipping through the MSQ and it does it automatically. Like we're not directly. Okay, I see his point now.
On Trail, we weren't allowed to participate in the cooking contest.
Okay, I get it.
The train in Shalawani or the invasion of Tuliyola. All of those critical events in the story.
Yeah, the invasion kind of just happened.
16 is guilty of this too, with the most egregious example being the boat chase towards the end of the game. It would have been a lot of fun to pilot this boat myself, dodging enemy attacks before ramming into their ship and
cooking my. Yeah, Arrogant, I'm with you on that. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't care about the cooking part. I just wanted it to be over. I don't want to do no mini game for that. Yes, I'm with you on that. Like, I really, like, I wasn't that excited about the cooking part. Like, I get it. I understand the idea behind why we were cooking because, oh, cooking brought the two people together and that's great.
Boarding it. But no, the cutscenes ate up all the budget, so all you get to do is perform the same combo you already have throughout the game against enemies who will barely try to kill you. I really struggle to think of another studio in the AAA space that demonstrates as much disdain for player agency as Creative Studio 3. More than simply committing the sin of ignoring show don't tell as a rule of storytelling, this is a studio which frequently asks its players to stay on the sideline of the experience that they paid for. This is a studio that fancies itself a great producer of stories, but stories can exist outside of the strict parameters laid down by the game developer. That's the beauty of video games. Emergent gameplay is as important to a game's narrative as its writing and its vocal performances. I think that Creative Studio 3 has completely lost sight of that. As an extension of the issues with player agency that plagued Final Fantasy XIV and 16, there's a grand illusion obscuring one of the most unsightly blemishes on the face of Creative Studio 3, the illusion of choice. This is specifically in reference to customization and progression, which are abysmal in both of the titles that have been produced by this studio.
Customization? Does he mean like Tome Gear, choosing between Tome Gear and Savage Gear?
Just a few weeks before producing this video, I managed to earn my best in slot gear in Final Fantasy XIV as a Viper. As a result of earning this achievement after months of raiding, I felt absolutely nothing. Similarly, in 16, every time I would forge a stronger weapon or piece of armor or accessory...
Well, the whole point of getting the BIS is so that you have BIS for the ultimate. Like, that's basically it. I mean, I get like you feel like it's nothing, but I mean, at that point, it just depends. Like, I like getting BIS because I want to do the maximum damage possible and try to optimize in a fight. And then also, I have the BIS for the ultimate when it comes out. I don't think CSA lost out of storytelling because FF16 was phenomenal. Yeah, I was thinking about that, Arrogant. Isn't like FF16 really fucking good? Like a lot of people say it's one of the best games they've ever played.
I would feel absolutely nothing. Creative Studio 3's approach to customization and progression is to simply avoid the topic altogether. Outside of
people say it's like one of their favorite games ever.
14 and 16 is an exercise in boredom. In 16, crafting materials are given to players like government cheese, a paltry handout to keep you moving along the singular track that has been determined for you. In 14, gear is entirely lacking in variety, and the process of
there's definitely flaws, yeah. I mean, definitely. It's just about what they're gonna do now. Didn't Yoshi P also admit that the story kind of fell off? I mean, not, I don't know what the word is, I'm sorry. What did Yoshi P say? He said like he knows the story wasn't, you know, good. I think in an interview he said that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw a tweet on that.
Selecting your gear is trivial.
So I like he's aware, is what I'm saying. He's aware, but 7.1, it was okay actually. I mean, the only part I really didn't like in 7.1 was that animal thing, and everything else was great. Like the animal, you had to like rescue the animal from the T-Rex, the dinosaur or whatever, and Koana's like running up there like And then he puts his hands up like, no, don't touch the animal. And he has a fucking gun on his back. Like, bro, just pull out the gun, shoot the motherfucker. I don't know, that part for me was like my least favorite part in 7.1. Everything else was cinema though. Like, I loved everything else. Most likely he said he knew the story wasn't what people were expecting. I see. A commenter is recommending Guild Wars 2 as a game that specifically does the things he wants from 14. His point in FF14, one job, one build, one set of gear, he wants variety. I think by design, FF14 is supposed to be a very accessible to raids type of game. And I think that's one of its biggest pluses. Is like, you don't have to customize so much. Like, it's so accessible. You can jump in and raid and have fun. Guild Wars 2? Something like Guild Wars 2? Holy fuck. Skill trees, different boons. There's like, bro, there's like 7 different skill trees. And you can only select 3 of them. So you can have multiple types of different ways of playing. You can be the boon giver. You can be, yeah. I feel like F14 is much easier to get into though because of its design. I feel like that's the good thing about it. It should stay that way, but yeah, that's just me though. That's one of its biggest things. Like, you know how many new raiders we got in Dawntrail for Arcadian? We got so many new raiders. So many new raiders. Bro, Guild Wars 2 could never. You know why? Because Guild Wars 2 is now at a point where it's just not fucking possible. No one progs, no one practices, no one does all that shit in Guild Wars 2. No one. Like, raiding is dead because it's not accessible at all, especially if you're a returning player. I feel like FF14 does a really good job of getting new players into raids. Like, really good job. In fact, they do even a better job now. You know why? You know why they do a better job now, even? Because now you have, what's it called? I'll try to find it. Hall of the Novice has been completely reworked to even be more accessible for new raiders. Like, you can do all this shit. It's been reworked. You can do tactical training to learn like how mechanics work. And now, yeah, we do need the raid planning game. That's even better. Like, I feel like they're doing, like, I feel like FF14, when it comes to raiding, is really good. It's very accessible. I feel like that's the big win from FF14. Is it's so accessible to get into raids. I appreciate D being a sort of palette cleanser. Shadowbringers and Endwalker are amazing, but they were very dense, lore heavy, and the Word of Light suffers a lot. It's crime that shit isn't in the game still. It should be, because they talked about it like before Dawntrail came out, right? And now it's still not here. I guess it's like really still being worked on, and they're trying to refine it. But it's crazy that it's taken so long. Yeah, it would be really good.
Push of a button which determines your best gear for
yeah, probably like probably a few more patches.
Any need for input or weighing of options or opportunity cost has been sanded down or completely discarded. These progression systems exist as a means to fulfill some kind of design quota, as if someone said, well, we're building a video game, so we need to have a crafting system and gear progression, but we'd much rather add another pointless side quest with 7 minutes of dialogue, so just slap something together and call it a day. For an MMO to have
I like the job quest.
gearing system this week is frankly unbelievable. I have never, not once, felt excited about what gear does in 14. Only what
I see what he's saying here. Like, here's the thing. If you're playing a game like Path of Exile, getting the right gear is like really hard. And when you get it, it's like, oh, you feel the satisfaction. You feel, oh man, I got the perfect thing. I got the perfect drop. So he's not wrong about this. I just think FF14 is not that type of game where getting gear is supposed to feel good. You know what I mean? You just kind of get it. Like, oh, cool, I got the one thing you can be excited for in this game is like getting the savage weapon without having to wait fucking 7 weeks or something. So you don't have to spend it with books. I mean, yeah, I got that, but like, okay, cool. I mean, yeah, I get it. Rotation was less focused around 2 minutes and people did their own thing in between that. Yeah. We need support jobs. I was thinking about making all jobs completely selfish and self-centered. I feel like that if they do that, Aravi, I feel like that would take away the team play aspect of it. Because, like, you do want other people to buff you in some ways still. I see what you're saying, though. Like, completely selfish. But this is a very... It would definitely remove, like, a team play aspect. I mean, they made it even easier to receive buffs because they increased the range of AoE raid buffs, right? So, I don't think we'll get them removed anytime soon. Especially, like... if we look at Reaper, right? Arcane Circle is, like... useful for itself as well as other jobs. So it would make Reaper kind of weird if they couldn't buff others and make use of the, you know, the 8 stacks they get. Yeah. Yeah, in their own right, make them all selfish, ruin the diversity. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some people prefer being the support over me in the carry. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even Bard can, like, Isuna, right? Or something like that. Like, they can remove a debuff and stuff like that. I think it's really cool that they can do stuff in that way. Can you imagine how hard it would be to maintain all jobs being viable and unique at the same time? Yeah. I mean... 2 minutes work fine as they are, but they become boring. I think the main thing that makes the 2 minute part like interesting is if a mechanic happens at a certain time and it's like, oh, okay, team, we need to delay the even window a little bit. Let's say like ultimate relativity. Like maybe initially people will be thinking, oh, let's all use the raid buffs together. Oh wait, we're getting rewinded. We can't use it now. We have to use it there. I mean, there's like cool discussions that can come from like timing the even windows based on the flow of a fight. I mean, that's like the cool part, right? I mean, that's the fun part. It depends on the fight, really.
What it looks like. But for a single-player, story-driven role-playing game without the weight of multiplayer balance and technical debt to feel just as bland, just as phoned in, and quite frankly just as boring is equally dumbfounding. Isolated from their other design flaws, Creative Studio 3's inability to create an interesting progression system in over a decade of game development might be excusable, but it goes back to the heart of the issue. Whether or not these are directly his decisions, Creative Studio 3's design philosophy under the leadership of Yoshi P seems interested only in eroding what little input is left in the hands of the players. The final point of contention that I want to talk about is Creative Studio 3's quest design, or lack thereof. In the MMORPG genre, quests are a bit of a conundrum because they typically boil down to talking to an NPC, clicking on an interactable item, or killing a group of enemies.
It's not supposed to be all that exciting.
That isn't necessary by its nature. When we talk about quest design in MMOs, we treat it as though it's a solved problem, as if that's the extent of what the genre is capable of. But quests can be more than the linear processes that we become accustomed to. Creative Studio 3 demonstrated a willingness to push the boundaries of these data.
Yeah, bro, I literally brain-gasmed over this mission, by the way. Like, I got to play my boy Thancred, and I get to do stealth. Yeah, I agree. This part was actually really fucking cool. This part was really good in the story. This is Thancred. This was so good. I love this part, especially because I love stealthing around. You know, it's my thing. This was definitely one of my favorite missions. And I got to play my favorite character.
Assumptions about quest design during...
You get more freedom with multi-burst windows? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know they're never going to do it. They're never going to bring back how things used to be. But I'm not going to shy away from it. If it does happen, I'm more than willing to accept it.
Endwalker that gave us a sort of Metal Gear Solid mission and a timed puzzle to contend with, which proved to me that the idea of the quest can still be a platform for...
Okay, people hated this mission, but I'm going to be the one to say it. I didn't mind it. I thought it was cool. I think it's just the fact that me, as a player, I love stealth. I love sneaking around. This part was interesting because you're not the OP warrior of light anymore. You're just some soldier, basically. Like, your powers are gone, and you have to be so much more careful. And it was really cool, like putting yourself in those shoes, and then like you're struggling against mobs. You can't just like one shot anymore. You're no longer OP. That was my favorite part about this mission. Is like, this is how it feels to be like a complete noob. Yep. Yeah. This dude is great. Never brought back into MSQ. I mean, there would be no point in bringing this back in MSQ. Or I guess you mean like similar style? into Dawntrail.
Innovation. What happened to that studio? Unfortunately, 16 and Dawntrail were a regression in this regard, resting on the laurels of the most...
I agree with him about this point, by the way. Like, he is explaining the Soldier one and playing as Thancred. Yeah, those are really good. They would be a lot nicer to play these than the stuff we have in Dawntrail. Yeah. I'm definitely with him on this one.
Puzzle.
Those Endwalker missions were
The
good.
idea of the quest can still be a platform for innovation.
Yeah, it was
What
so
happened to
interesting.
that studio?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, 16 and Dawntrail were a regression in this regard, resting on the laurels of the most basic form of quest design that you can think of. Go over there, deliver this thing, kill this bug. Yes, the fate of the world is at stake, but I really need you to help me pick these herbs.
Well, when you put it like that.
FFXIV's games lean heavily on the dialogue as the experience of their quests, rather than the given task
World's in danger.
of the quest.
Gotta
This
get
is an
those
assumption,
herbs.
But it seems to me that the developers are confident that the intrinsic value of their quest design is more than enough for their players. The gameplay experience or the prize at the other end of the quest are an afterthought. In some cases, they're right. The story has the capacity to be more than enough. When I think of the most memorable moments during Shadowbringers,
This was peak.
I don't think of gameplay experiences. Rather, I think of the laundry list of incredible story beats that line that expansion story from start to finish. In that particular case, the intrinsic value covered the cost of admission. But when the story isn't as strong, then the gameplay better be damned good, or at least have the wherewithal to give me something I care about for sitting through your boring dialogue. But the reality is, that's an impossible thing to ask for.
He's not wrong about the boring dialogue part. There's a lot of boring dialogue in Dawntrail. I mean, it's not even a question. There's so many parts. That's what I was saying earlier, is I just want those to be more interesting because, like, I feel like a lot of the times I have to force myself to read it because I don't want to miss out on the story. And a lot of it is just, like, worthless, you know?
OCP's vision for creative
I wish I was that llama. A lot of people wish they were that llama so they can go so they can spit all over Woklamat's face because they hate her. That's not the real Dante. Dude, you know what's crazy? Every time our boy Esteban showed up, he's always having the best cutscenes. Every time. So every time I see him, I get fucking hyped because I know shit's about to go down. I know shit's gonna get super interesting. I love him, man.
That's an impossible thing to ask for.
Oh, what's impossible? Oh, sorry, I need to go back a bit.
Start to finish. In that particular
You have a vid? I'll check it out.
case, the intrinsic value covered the cost of admission. But when the story isn't as strong, then the gameplay better be damned good, or at least have the wherewithal to give me something I care about for sitting through your boring dialogue. But the reality is, that's an impossible thing to ask for. Yoshi P's vision for Creative Studio 3 requires that their games are completely devoid of tension, threat, or input by the player, out of fear that their game's true reward, which is the next cutscene, will go unseen. To that end, their worlds must be built as set dressing for the story, rather than spaces in which emergent gameplay can take place. Traditional
I mean, not wrong. Okay, I understand.
progression systems threaten the delicate balance of their game, so they must be reduced to linear statistical advantages, lest they overwhelm the player with having to make a choice. And because the player cannot be reliably trusted to participate in a theatrical scene exactly as the developers envisioned it, they're forced to wrest control away from the player over and over again to ensure that the gameplay doesn't get in the way of the narrative, which, as you know, is the most important part of a video game. I understand that for many of you, Yoshi P is something of a primal. People become incredibly emotional when you have anything negative to say about the products that he's doing.
I mean, yeah, because he literally saved the game, right? I mean, everyone's going to love him because he saved the game. He made it something so amazing. Like, he saved the game. He brought in new players. They got people into Shadowbringers, Endwalker. That was like peak. We wouldn't have FF14 without him.
But remember, Naoki Yoshida works for a company. He's at the helm of an organization which creates products which you pay for. Some of you have given thousands of dollars to Square Enix for continued access to Final Fantasy XIV. It's my opinion that for the money you've spent, you deserve better, although whether or not you agree with that is up to you. Yoshi P and the hundreds of faceless employees who work at Creative Studio 3 are not your friends. You have a transactional
I would like more, for sure,
with that studio's publisher and the games they produce. If you're happy with the slop that you've been served by Creative Studio 3 since the release of 16...
I wouldn't mind having more content. Of course. Like, I think everyone would want something like that.
...and Dawntrail, then all power to you. For those of you who are a bit more sympathetic to my critiques, do as I've done. Vote with your wallet.
Vote with your wallet. Interesting video. I mean, he had some good points here and there.
Well, everybody, that is the end of that scathing essay. I'm looking forward to the public's reception of it, but if you'll give me about a minute, I have a few unscripted words that I want to say. This channel actually began as a Final Fantasy XIV channel, and it began because I was so bored during Endwalker's post-expansion patches, and I wanted something to do with the game, so I figured a few top 10 lists and maybe a few essay pieces couldn't hurt. 14 has been such a massive disappointment, particularly in the last 2 years, that I just can't seem...
In 2 years? I don't know about that. I mean, it's an opinion. I mean, I'm not gonna shove my opinion in his face, but 2 years though? I feel like it was good. I don't know. It just depends what type of player you are. But like, I feel like the last 2 years of FF were actually pretty decent.
Myself making more dedicated content about the game. I would love to have a reason to come back and write more essays about 14, but I just don't think that's going to happen. There are plenty of other games out there to explore and other things to write essays about, of course, so please stick around if you love MMOs as much as I do and you'd like to hear me talk about, say,
interesting video.
Coming up next. Either way, as we approach the end of the year, I just want to say thanks to everybody for being here. I know it's only a few thousand of you, but I really appreciate it. It's a lot bigger than I thought.
What did you say earlier here with Yoshi?
Emotional when you have anything negative to say about the products that he stewards, but remember, Naoki Yoshida works for a company. He's at the helm of an organization which creates products which you pay for. Some of you have given thousands of dollars to Square Enix for continued access to Final Fantasy XIV. It's my opinion that for the money you've spent, you deserve better, although whether or not you agree with that is up to you. Yoshi P and the hundreds of
It's almost like he's implying that you shouldn't spend the money on the game and that they should do more. I mean, I guess that's what he's saying, right?
faceless employees who work at Creative Studio 3 are not your friends. You have a transactional relationship with that studio's publisher and the games they produce. If you're happy with the slop that you've been served by Creative Studio 3 since the release of 16 and Dawn Trail, then all power to you. For those of you who are a bit more sympathetic...
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, Arrogant. Yeah, I mean, like, it's so subjective to say that Dawn Trail is a slop, because, like, some of the ballot content, I'll tell you, was not a slop. I can definitely tell you that. There's just no way I can see it that way, because I feel like the trials were so good. Even farming the trials, farming the mounts, like early game Dawn Trail, like early raids, they were good, I feel. Arcadian was nice. I don't know. I feel like it's very mixed. I feel like story, I can agree with you. I can agree with you. If you say story, yes. Okay, there's definitely some parts in the story I was not a fan of. I can probably, like, show you something from what do you call it? From 7.1. From 7.1, one of my least favorite parts. I'll just give you like an example. This is my 7.1 VOD. There was a part here I didn't really like. Everything here was great, by the way, but like when you entered this area, this part right here. This part here with the cats and like all the animals and all the animals, save the animals, and then here this part. This was my least favorite part, and I thought it would be like, oh, okay, something's gonna happen now. Finally, we get a cutscene. It was genuinely the worst cutscene for 7.1 for me. So, right, like, I want you to just think about this, right? We have Kawana right here, right? He's got a big-ass gun. All right, he is, you know, supposed to be this guy here that saves the animals. Great. He runs over, right? So he's running.
Help him.
Help him. Save him. Okay, okay, he does use his gun a few times. All right, cool. He keeps running,
Bro,
right?
Blasting.
He's blasting. And then, what does he do? Stop, motherfucker. He's risking his life for this animal. And just kind of eats the... he just eats the head.
What the fuck? He broke his glasses.
Broke his glasses, man. Like, what? I'm sorry, but like, what is happening? Why are you trying to die for this stupid-ass animal? If the gun's not working, don't worry. I'm here, Warrior of Light. I can help you, brother.
Not
You
the
don't...
glasses.
Like, I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to build his character as, like, this caring guy, right? Like, he cares for the animals. He cares for the... Like, he's trying to do the right thing. But this cutscene, like, man, it just didn't work for me, okay? I get what they were trying to do. It just didn't... It didn't sit right with me. And obviously they can't show blood or like, oh man, there's blood pouring out of his eyes. Like, no, his glasses broke. It's fine. Well, they can show blood, right? I mean, I feel like we've seen a lot of blood in this game. Some dark, crazy shit. But here he just broke his glasses. Yeah, they can show blood. Yeah. You're right. I remember, oh my god. In Heaven's Ward. Holy fuck. When Estinine's coughing blood. Look at that. He's like so determined to save the Hetzo. He puts his like, I don't know, man. For me, this shit kind of flopped a little bit. And I'm laughing. Look, I'm laughing, dude. I'm dumb.
Alright, chill.
Look at me, I'm laughing. I'm just like, bruh.
I will save the Hetzo.
I'm just laughing, bro. Like, what's he doing? I don't know, man. This was such... Oh, sorry, wrong scene. That was such a fucking bad cutscene for me. I don't know, man. Like, you know, in FF14, they always kind of ramp it up, and then epic cutscene happens. This one kind